gatherings, if you need to. Less than an hour away from kickoff in Miami, where the Dolphins will take on the Packers, a team that's unbeaten in the month of December under head coach Matt LaFleur. And then it's the two lowest scoring offenses in the league, Denver and the LA Rams, meeting up at SoFi, the nightcap in the NFC South leading Buccaneers, visiting the spiraling and not in such a good way Cardinals out in Arizona. And here we go. We got Sportsline's Todd Fuhrman and Emory Hunt joining us to make these games a little more interesting. Merry Christmas, gentlemen. We're looking for some profitability on Christmas Day as well. And the first game of the day, in many ways, is the most interesting one. Packers and Dolphins. Both teams still have playoff aspirations. Miami's favored by 3.5. Attacking the spread here. Emory, what's your play?
I'm laying at 3.5 points here with the Dolphins, Russ. I like the fact that their offense is not weather dependent. They can play well in the snow. They can play well in the rain. They can play well in hot weather. I think this Dolphins offense will put a lot of strain on what that Packers defense wants to do. They want to be able to apply pressure. They want to be able to really smother this passing game. But Tua is so doggone precise with the short to intermediate accuracy that he's going to be able to bypass that coverage and find these targets consistently over the middle of the field. So I like them in this game. I also like we'll get to that later.
You know what, Emory? I'm right there with you, but I'm going to take a slightly different approach to back the Dolphins. And I think it's imperative in the wake of their 3-game losing streak, while the season can get away from Miami, that they get off to a quick start. So I'll go after a derivative market here, and I'm going to lay a 0.5 point with the Dolphins in the first quarter. Gets me a price of plus 105. When you look at Mike McDaniel and the scripts he's drawn up in the Dolphins' home games this year, they've gotten off to very quick starts, and I think he can catch this Green Bay defense a little bit off balance. I've been stunned by the narrative out there. I understand people want Aaron Rodgers to crash the back half of the NFC playoff picture, but you look at current form. Yes, Miami is on a 3-game losing streak, but they lost to the 49ers, the Chargers, and the Bills all on the road. Green Bay has magically resurrected their season with a road win at Chicago and a home win against Baker Mayfield and the Rams. We may need to pump the brakes a little bit, but I think Green Bay has success moving the football through the air against the much maligned Miami secondary. But ultimately, it's about the balance that the Dolphins can show early. Look for Raheem Mostert to get a quick start. I'll take the Dolphins in the first 15 minus the hook.
All right, let's target the total now, which is 50. That's several points higher than if you added their combined points per game this season. Green Bay's about middle of the pack in that regard. Dolphins closer to the top. Todd, you going over or under this total?
You know, Russ, I'm going to go over the total here, and I'm going to do so in the first half with a slightly more manageable number at 24 for a lot of the reasons that I outlined, where I think Miami gets off to a quick start. We've seen them bog down in second halves, whether it's adjustments that they're not making or that their opponents are. I think both of these teams can come out guns a-blazing. When you look at Green Bay offensively in recent weeks, they've looked a lot more dynamic throwing the football down the field, and that's largely because Aaron Rodgers is getting on the same page as his young receivers. I love the joking rapport we saw after the game about Christian Watson not running the right route and the two of them creating a little bit of a disconnect there. It shows that the comfortability levels are growing. Romeo Doubs, Allen Lazard, the two-headed monster in the backfield. Green Bay has a path to success. And Miami, we know about their weapons in the receiving room, but I think it's all about ground and pound early. I like this game to get off to a quick start. I'll go over 24 in the first half.
I'm going to go under on the entire game. I don't feel like the Dolphins like the effort defensively they put out there on the field the last couple of weeks, especially last weekend. I feel like this passing game for Green Bay can give them some problems, but I expect them with those two bookends at defensive end, Chubb as well as Phillips, to really turn up the heat, get to Aaron Rodgers, put him on the ground, and they'll try to play the run on the way to the quarterback. If you're Miami, you don't want this game to become an Aaron Rodgers versus Tua Tagovailoa game. I think they do a great job defensively up front, so I like the under.
All right, let's talk some player props, guys. Starting with the Dolphins, Santa Emory, what is your best Miami player prop?
I'm going with the most consistent receiver, in my opinion. That's Jalen Waddle, over 63.5 receiving yards today. I feel like this is on the receiving end consistently of those play action fakes, darts over the middle of the field. He's always open. It's hard to cover him inside the slot because he's so explosive and so quick. You could say the same thing about Tyreek Hill, but I just like the matchup and the consistency. We've been seeing it time and time again, week in, week out. Waddle is starting to get even better as the season goes on.
And for me, Emory, I'm going to go to the backfield for the Miami Dolphins and make a case for Raheem Mostert to replicate the performance we saw last Saturday night in Buffalo. When you look at this Miami backfield, yes, they'll get Jeff Wilson back, but what kind of workload is Wilson capable of taking on? You look at his productivity during the last 3 or 4 weeks, he's had a grand total of 5 carries dealing with that hip injury, and as a result, Mostert carried 7 times for north of 130 yards. The one thing I like about Mostert the most is that he can go over this number at a moment's notice with one big carry. He ripped off a 67-yard gain against that Bills defense with some shoddy tackling. And you look at Green Bay's overall body of work. Yes, they were a little bit better last week against the Rams and that beleaguered offensive line, but Cam Akers still found a little bit of room to run. And if you take that Rams game out of the equation, in 9 out of the last 10 games, Green Bay has given up at least 117 rushing yards or more. I think you see a steady commitment for Mike McDaniel early to get the ground game on track, and Raheem Mostert becomes the beneficiary. If he gets 12 to 14 carries today, he goes well over this number in the low 60s.
All right, let's wrap up this segment with a look at the Packers player props. Todd, you start us off. Who you got?
I'm going to go to the receiving corps for Green Bay. And Russ, normally, as Emory knows, I try and do everything I can to make cases for unders with players that are typically overvalued. But I couldn't find a player that I really liked under the total, so I'm going to go with Christian Watson over his receiving number. I know he finished last Monday in the 40s, and that's kind of been hit or miss when you look at some of his skill set. But this is all matchup-based, and Miami, for all of their strengths as far as generating a pass rush up front, it leaves a lot to be desired on the back end. This is a secondary that's extremely vulnerable, especially to speed and busted plays downfield. I think you're going to see Rodgers take a couple of deep shots to get Christian Watson involved. He is the burner on the outside, capable of taking a lid off an opposing defense. And when I look at Watson's numbers, I think he's poised for boomer bunch potential. Wouldn't shock me if he found pay dirt at least once and went over 60, getting us an easy cash midway through the third.
Well, Todd, I did find the under at a receiver position. I'm going with Alan Lazard, under 3.5 receptions. I got burned last week thinking Lazard was going to be the pseudo tight end within this offensive attack, trying to attack the middle of the field. But when you get Romeo Doubs back and you also have Christian Watson, to your point, Todd, they're going to work touchdown to check down in the passing game. So I think those targets will go to those two guys. Tunyon will see some. We'll see a couple of dump offs to the backs. I think right now the odd man out, unfortunately, is Lazard, who's probably their most dependable over the middle of the field. So I'd like him to go under 3.5 receptions.
All right, first game of the day, soon to kick off in Miami. It's the Packers and Dolphins. Todd Fuhrman, Emory Hunt, thank you so much for the picks. Let's recap them a little bit. Both guys taking the Dolphins, attacking the spread. Todd specifically calling for the home team to win the first quarter. Todd thinks the first half's going to go over the 24. Emory's taking the under for the game, and you can see the player props for each guy right there. And coming up, we're going to hit the next game on the Christmas Day schedule. Broncos.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.